Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Big East Rewind. I am Chuck Everson, your host from Villanova, and today we have a special show. We have a lot of help. Sonny and I don't do this by ourselves. We have a lot of help with the program. We have a whole crew of people that do all the editing that you see and help getting guests and put things together. And one of our people that have been working with us has done a fantastic job. He's a current student at Villanova University. So we've had him in as our intern, and he's been doing a fantastic job. If you see any of the shorts up on YouTube, or if you see any of the reels on Instagram or TikTok or anything, that's all due to James. And James has been instrumental in helping us. We're a bunch of 60-year-olds. We needed a 20-year-old to kind of show us what to do with this adventure that we've been on for the last 5 years. So thank goodness for James. And as a reward for James' work, he had an idea that he wanted to bring on his one of his professors in journalism. So I'm going to bring to the show right now our intern, our good pal, James Happ. James, thanks for joining us.
Appreciate you having me, Chuck. After
Yeah,
listening to all those intros in the past, I'm very excited to hear one about myself.
there you go. All right, there you go. And our guy Sonny couldn't be with us today. He had some family business to attend to, but we stepped up with the next best thing. We got James with us, and why don't you introduce our guest today, James?
All right. Our guest today has been covering Big East basketball since the 90s. He's Villanova's journalism area coordinator, and my soon-to-be sports journalism professor, Michael Bradley. Professor Bradley, how are you doing?
Great, James. How are you, Chuck? It's great to be here.
Yeah, great to have you, Mike. I appreciate you coming on with us. As I told you pre-show, we have taken a 360-degree look at this place at the Big East Conference. And, but we haven't had the perspective of a professor. I wish, to be honest with you, I wish I had some of the professors that we had when we were playing were still alive and still with us, because they would be great. The stories that they would get from having us in class would be tremendous. So,
Well, I've had a bunch of the more recent generation of basketball players in class, and from Chris Jenkins to Phil Booth to Jason Hart to Eric Pascal. I had a whole bunch of them. I got Tyler Perkins in one of my classes right now.
oh, really? Okay. Well, it's good to know that they're going to school now, that they're getting paid all this money, Mike. That's good. I'm glad to hear that. At least we didn't lose our reputation for being a student athlete type place. So
Precisely.
give us some stuff on some of these guys. These guys. Listen, I would tell you this: these guys that you mentioned that were all members of the different championship teams. And it was cool because Jay Wright used to let us all go to practice and hang out, and you get to know somebody when you see them in practice. So if I was there 2 or 3 times or 4 times, I would try to go with usually with Mark Plansky, and we would go like 4 or 5 times a season back then. So now if you get there, the guys or the kids all know who you are, so they run by and maybe give you a shove, or Eric will give you a poke, or Jalen will say something to you and just have fun. So I know these guys are all really good people. So tell me about what they were like as students.
Well, they were. You got to remember, these guys play on television. They play in front of thousands of fans. They're venerated by their student peers, by alumni, and they're just kids. And that's the funny thing about it. You got to realize that at the core of it, they're college kids. And I tried not to treat them any differently than anybody else, but they did kind of have rather high profile positions in the university, and it was and I could rib them a little bit. It used to be funny because the kids would be talking about Jay and saying, "Oh, he's the greatest," and then you'd see the eyes rolling on the players because they knew how much he would get after them and chew them out when they made mistakes.
Right.
So the experience for them is always in the rearview mirror better than when it was when they were going through it.
Did Jay show up in any of the classes to make sure these guys were there, actually in class?
No, but he did have the student managers and the graduate assistants doing it. And one time, and I can't remember which player it was, showed up 5 minutes late for class. And this guy had come to every single class. He showed up 5 minutes late and he didn't start. He didn't play the first half of the next game.
Yeah. Okay.
Jay was hardcore.
Well, you know what? I'll tell you a funny story with that because, a lot of times we took red-eye flights home and everybody had 8 o'clock classes,
Yeah.
and Coach Mass himself would come in and actually, it was a sports journalism class, all right? And I'm trying to think of who Dr. Duty was there. Jack Duty was there, okay? So he came in and he's starting to talk and he brings in a special guest to speak to the class and in comes Coach Massimino.
Oh,
And
boy.
I looked to my left and a couple of guys were there, but Dwayne McClain was not. Okay. So we had to play. I think we might have been playing Sonny's team at the Palestra 2 days, after. And it was funny because he got benched for about maybe 3 possessions, and then they put him back in the game because he was that important to the
If
team.
it had been Murray Mack, he might have missed the first half.
And he might have missed the first quarter, yeah,
Right.
roughly, yeah. So take us through your path. You went to Michigan.
Yes. And came back. And of course, Michigan was the team that Villanova beat in 85, #1 seed to get along its road to getting to Lexington. And that was a tough one for me to stomach because this was supposed to be the year that Michigan really took a step forward. By 1990, I was working for the Sporting News. I was writing a lot for when Dick Vitale's basketball yearbook started in the 90s, was writing for Blue Ribbon College basketball yearbook. So I was covering a lot of stuff and going to a lot of games. And it was always fun to go to Big East Media Day and see all of the coaches in their element. Standing 2 feet from John Thompson and listening to him talk. And few people were more honest than him. I remember one time when Iverson was with the Sixers, I showed up to Big East Media Day to write an article about Iverson. I wanted to talk to John Thompson. And I said, Allen's getting a lot of heat for dominating the ball, taking a lot of shots. Do you think he's ever going to become a real point guard? And Thompson looked at me in that, sub-basement voice of his and said, Zebra will never change his spots. So there was no way that he ever said Iverson was going to change anything. So it was great to be part of all of that back when Rollie and Louis and Boeheim and John Thompson, the big names were part of the Big East.
Yeah, that was when the coaches had big giant personalities and were rock stars every time. And we all knew the referees' names too, which was pretty wild. You don't see that people yell, "Hey ref!" Now they were yelling, "Hey Larry Limbo, hey
Yes.
Higgs, hey." But the camera always went right to the sideline anytime anything happened on the court, right?
And that was the thing too. Big East, ESPN was smart. When they crafted Big Monday, it wasn't Syracuse Villanova. It was Boeheim against Raleigh. I mean, you might be talking about Pearl Washington or talking about some of the star players on the teams, but they crafted this personality model. And when it was Louis against Thompson, Roy Chipman was in there. And whenever any of these coaches, their teams were playing, as you said, they were the stars, and that was what it was. And it was all over the country. I mean, even in Philadelphia, John Chaney, man, you watched everything Chaney did, and when he finally got up off the bench, he'd spend like the first 6-7 minutes of the game just watching. Then he'd get up, and then it became the John Chaney show. And it was the same way with those great Big East coaches.
So, Professor Bradley, obviously now you're over at Villanova, and you're doing some freelance writing. You apparently got your master's at Villanova in 2017 while also teaching there. So I want to hear a little bit about your more recent experiences and how you balance everything while also being a full-time professor here.
You just got to get up and grind. I'm up at 5:15 every day. I'm working on Monday through Thursday till 8 o'clock at night. When you love what you do, you never really are upset about it. And I just wrote a piece for Philadelphia Magazine that ran in the summer about the future of college athletics in the Philadelphia area. Got a chance to talk to Eric Rodel, got a chance to talk to Kevin Willard, along with a whole bunch of other people. And it was revelatory getting the idea of what college athletics is like now. Kevin Willard told me that 80 to 90% of his job now is raising money. And he said that when he's recruiting a transfer, 90% of it is money, 10% is fit, academics, and how he's gonna play on the team. You got to have that money. And Villanova's lucky to be in the Big East, where bigger schools that have football are spending 15 million of that 21 million, 20.5 million revenue share on football. They don't have as much. Big East, they could spend as much as they could raise on basketball.
Yeah, so you get a little bit into the NIL and the transfer portal. That's I feel like a lot of times when we're doing these episodes, everyone has something to say about that. So I would love to hear some of your opinions on how it's affected college basketball today.
Well, I mean, the one thing that everybody talks about, the difference between the college and pro with the payments, is that the pros have the guardrails, right? There's a salary cap. There's a collective bargaining agreement between the owners and the teams and the players. So there is some structure. Now, with the players, there is no structure. You can't sign them to a contract that's binding. You can't keep them from transferring. They tried that. They said you get one freebie and then you got to sit out a year. They went to court, got overturned. This the settlement with the money, the revenue sharing numbers are going to keep going up, and then now they've got the NIL on top of that. And I read today where an overwhelming number of the NIL deals have been approved. It made it sound like this college sports commission was going to really be watching these closely to make sure the players weren't getting $400,000 to show up to a camp for an hour. The guys are making a lot of money and they aren't being told that they can't do these deals on top of whatever they're getting from the school. So, people use the term Wild West. I love talking to Tom Izzo about it. Izzo goes nuts because he's old school, and people keep saying, why does he do it still? Because all the other coaches, Larinaga, Jay, they've all said, even Tony Bennett, who's a lot younger, they bagged it, they got out. He's still around, so it's a very fascinating time.
You say NIL. It's really not anymore, though,
No.
Mike. It's really pay for play, right?
Well, that's the revenue sharing. It's you
Right.
come here and we say, all right, I'm going to give you, and I don't know what it is in college basketball. I was told by a college football coach who has been at several Power Four conferences. A quarterback's getting $1 million to $1.2 million. A good left tackle can get $600,000. So yeah, it's pay to play. But on top of that, they're still allowed to do name, image, and likeness. So
Right.
I can go out and get, a TV commercial I want or a brand endorsement. And that's money on top of it all. And the schools are working with, there's a company in Berwyn called Playfly Sports that Villanova works with that helps try to come up with different ways to raise money, but also to put schools and athletes in touch with brands. I mean, their CEO told me, or their chief financial officer told me that they could put together a thing where 30 people would have a bourbon tasting at Kevin Willard's house, and you pay $1,000, and it's just you and the coach, and he tells stories, and you taste some bourbon, and you have something to eat, and Villanova raises a lot of money for its revenue sharing. This is what's happening now.
How does it change? Like you were there when kids were not getting paid, right?
Right.
Now you
Unless they
got
were in
now
the
you got
SEC.
now you got guys like, Eric Dixon made a lot of money, and rightfully so, and some of these other guys that are in your class now. How does it change? I mean, does their attitude change? Is it basically the same that they had to learn? I can't imagine, I mean, in a school like Villanova, I understand, they are strict with that type of stuff. But there are guys that are the kid from BYU that we just played against, right?
Yeah.
$7 million. You think he's worried about the math test he's having on Thursday?
No, he's not at all. And sometimes it's a little short-sighted because people forget when you make 7 million at age 18 or 7 million over a couple of years, he may go to the NBA right off the bat. So he's not going to make 7 million because that's for 2 or 3 years. But he's going to make a couple $1 million. He's going to go to the NBA. But you know, that 33% of that, 35% of that goes away immediately for taxes. He's got an agent. And the difference between agents and the pros and the colleges, the agents in college can get a lot higher percentages of the revenues that the players are getting. So a lot of that goes away. He spreads some to his parents or to his family. You hope that he's going to take the lion's share of it and put it into something that's going to, make money and set him up for the future. But that doesn't always happen. As far as the players at Villanova, their status on campus has changed. That's the biggest thing I see. They were always looked at as really big figures because they were so successful. but now they're big, rich figures. It's one thing when you're winning the game. It's another thing when you're making a few $100,000 doing it. And
Right.
you may be driving a car that's a little different, and you're wearing clothes, and you're going out to different places for dinner than just going to Campco and grabbing a slice of pizza.
Right. Right. You know, back when we played, we had no football team up until my senior year. So
Right.
we were it. We were it, you know, and I know exactly what you're talking about, you know. And everybody, and thank God there was no cell phones and stuff. You would have
Oh,
never
yeah.
got to class with pictures and all this other stuff, right?
Well,
I
and
can't even
also,
imagine how they navigate all that stuff.
yeah, and it's the students are pretty cool. Like I'm in I got a class with 28 kids, and Tyler Perkins is in it. And he comes into class, and I greet everybody when they get there. I'm in the classroom before the first student gets there. But nobody's like running up to him and asking him for pictures. He's got friends, but they're friends who are friends with him because they like him as a person, not because they're trying to become a leech or something like that.
Right. Right.
I'm more worried if I'm them about the pictures if they happen to go to a party or they
Yep.
happen to go to Kelly's and they're doing a little something that college kids do, and somebody then takes the picture. That's where the trouble can start for them.
Exactly. I mean, that could be a scholarship lost, and there goes everything, right? I mean,
Precisely.
you're in. Listen, we all. I always say, thank God that stuff wasn't around when we were there, because we'd all be getting out of jail now. You know what I mean? You know, just I remember going to Smokey Joe's, which was in Wayne at
Yep.
the time, and somebody got sick. They had too much, so somebody goes and helps him. Somebody's watching the door. Somebody gets Tony Ryan. Shout out to Tony Ryan. All right.
Ryan
And
family.
when we get, yeah, and the Ryan family, and they take care of making a blockade, and that person was allegedly at Smokes.
Yes.
Now, if that happened, he'd be all over YouTube, Instagram, and everything else before we were even in the car. It'd be over.
Exactly. And that's what the difference is too. A lot of the stuff that happened when you played that happened through the 90s into the early 2000s with on behind the scenes stuff wasn't leaking. We as media members, we were doing everything we could to learn as much as possible. But
Right.
because there was no social media, because there was not the ease with which you could get stuff out there, it was a different world in terms of what was happening, off the court.
Gotcha.
All right, so Mr. Bradley, I'm going to shift gears here quickly. So for all the Philly fans out there, I know you used to be a host of the Fanatic,
Yeah.
97.5 FM, the Fanatic. I just wanted to hear a little bit about your experiences there, and yeah, just
An
what do you have from there?
ill-fated year back when before it became the Fanatic, it was 9:50 a.m. I was with Glenn Foley from Boston College, former Big East quarterback. Glenn was a character, I'll put it that way, and you can read into that what you want. We had about 15 listeners. We had about 3 sponsors, and it was right before the ESPN deal that made it the Fanatic and it brought it to ESPN. But it was an interesting thing, doing a 6 to 9 a.m. Morning show. And it was a time when the Phillies were, Philadelphia's a pro sports town. And that's the thing. As much as we all love college basketball, and as much as you can have a night where there's 6,500 people at the Pavilion, 8,000 people at the Palestra, there's a few thousand people on Hawk Hill, it's still a pro town. So it was tough to cover college basketball on the radio, especially at that time. But it was fun to do it. In Philadelphia, you got to know your stuff when you're talking to people because the fans know their stuff. And it was also fun. I think we had Jay on a couple of times, and he was very gracious. And Jay's the best interview out there because especially now that he's part of the media or was part of the media, he
Right.
knows what we want. But
Yeah.
the stories he used to tell about, especially when Raftery came to town, how difficult it was, especially if it was like an 8 o'clock game, you had to go out with Raftery afterwards. And Raftery's Count Dracula. You can't kill him. He not only closes the one bar, he goes and finds the after hours spot. And Jay was brutal at getting up the next morning if there was practice.
Yeah, he's tough. Listen, I've been out with him and Jay a couple of times after games, and You know, he's not done until the last drop is gone. That's it. You know, there's
And
no
somebody told a story. It might have been Jay that told a story. Raftery there was a whole bunch of people after the game, and there was a bar, and they go into the bar at like 10 o'clock, and the bartender says, "Look, we're closing." He goes, "It's 10 o'clock." Raftery was indignant, and he said, give us a round. So he gets a round, and they finally leave. They get asked to leave, and Raftery's got about 6 beers in his pockets of his overcoat that he somehow was able to get a hold of on the way out the door.
yeah. Talk about the Philly, like the Philly sports. They are, the Fanatic is perfectly named, and I actually still listen to the Fanatic. I have the app. My son is a gigantic Eagles fan. The first game he ever saw was an Eagles game, and fell in love with the whole culture of the Eagles culture and everything like that. Talk about how crazy those guys get. I mean, especially there, it's really a football town. Everybody else comes in,
It is, and it's unfortunate because the rivalries in college get kind of pushed to the side a little bit. And part of it is, the Holy War isn't what the Holy War used to be because St. Joe's and
Yeah.
Villanova as institutions have kind of, changed. When you went to Villanova, and my wife went to Villanova and graduated in '84, so I spent a lot of time around there. Villanova kids and St. Joe's kids, they went to this, it was either or. Which one do you want to go to? It's kind of like, where did your parents go? If your parents went to Villanova, you went to Villanova. If your parents went to St. Joe's, you went to St. Joe's, and you hated each other.
right.
And that was, those games at the Palestra in the late 70s and the early 80s between those teams, 9,208 fans, usually the second game of a doubleheader. Penn would play Yale, and 16 people, and by the end of the game, everybody's trying to win. And I remember one game, the St. Joe's fans had bags of confetti, and they were throwing them out on the court. And they had to stop every 10 seconds because your players had hit the confetti and they'd fly. So they're constantly brooming down the court. Streamers, the craziness. So doing sports talk radio in this town, the Eagles could be 10-0 and lose one game, and the town goes into mourning because
I know.
they just think that it's the end of the world.
Well, last year was classic. They lost 2 games in a row. Everybody wanted to fire Sirianni. Everybody, and they win the whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, they're heading to bye, and there was talk that this was perfect. Fire Sirianni on Monday, hire Belichick, bring him in. He gets 2 weeks to get everything ready, and now we're going. And
Yeah,
I mean, people were talking about that seriously.
it does get crazy. I will say this, I've been on both ends of it, Mike. I had a really good game against Patrick my sophomore year. I got 5 standing ovations where the sold out Spectrum, everybody's cheering my name. The next game, I go to dunk the ball on somebody from Seton Hall. I get hit in the arm or the hand. The hand is part of the ball, especially
Right.
when you're playing in the street, right? I hit it off the back iron. I got booed out of the arena. Out of the arena. So I know all too well about Philly sports fans for
And
sure.
it's interesting you bring up Seton Hall because we didn't talk about Carlesimo, and he was another character
Yeah.
who was somebody, he's got that beard, he's standing there with the sweater vest on the sideline, and he got to be pretty big, especially once they made it to the Final Four in the final game in '89. He became a real personality in that game. So it was great. And the Rollie stories from the media's point of view were legion. I remember a game in the '90s when you guys played. You of course were gone, but Villanova played Syracuse, and he was feuding with the media, and Villanova lost. He walked into this. I don't know if you ever saw the media room at the Spectrum. It was tiny.
Tiny.
They had a
Yeah.
lectern set up, about 20 chairs. We're all sitting there. He walks in with a cigar the size of a Louisville Slugger unlit in his mouth. And he just looks straight ahead and says, questions. And he answers every question, yes or no, doesn't look at the person asking them, doesn't look at the media. After about 10 of them, he just walks out. And everybody looks at themselves and is like, all right, Raleigh's in a mood. So, it just, that's the way it
Yeah.
works.
Well, I'm sure that carried over till practice the next day, depending on the outcome of that game. I
I'm sure.
guarantee that too,
Yeah, I'm sure he was.
Yeah, he was a polarizing guy, Mike, right? I mean, you either loved him or you didn't. And I think that alone is the reason why he's not in the Hall of Fame, even though all of us keep pushing that button to try to get him in. With, I mean, the record and the numbers and everything say that he should 100% be in. Especially everybody else during that time who coached in the Big East is in.
Yeah,
You
and he
know.
won a national championship. Carnesecca didn't win one.
Yep.
Behan didn't win one during that period. He won one later
Right.
when he got Carmelo. Carlesimo made it to the finals. He didn't win it.
Yeah.
I agree, and he was a polarizing figure. When things were going well, there's nobody you wanted to be around more than Rollie. He was a come on, big circle, put your arm around you, light the cigar, and but he could be, as you know, he could be a prickly pear, and the media had to write about him when he lost, and he didn't like it.
Right.
So he had very few guys that he was close to from a media standpoint.
Right. Yep.
Yeah, so we're talking a little bit about the old school Big East, which I know a little bit about, especially in my time here, but obviously I know a little bit more now about modern Big East basketball, especially with Villanova. Since I've been here, we have not made the tournament. Unfortunate. I just missed the Final Four by a year. But yeah, I would love to hear some, current Big East takes, potentially outlook on this season, how you think Villanova's looking, with head coach Kevin Willard now taking over. Yeah.
The Big East is such an interesting conference, right? You've got the SEC and the Big Ten, which run everything in football and have so much money from the media. And you would never expect that a conference that doesn't have football could still be as influential as
Yeah.
the Big East is. And what you still have is a bunch of really good basketball schools. And adding a school like Creighton, which is the game in Omaha. I mean, you go
Oh,
there
yeah.
and there's 15, 18,000 people. That's the pro team. Marquette, what a tradition there going back to Al McGuire and winning the 77 national championship. Xavier, same thing in Cincinnati. So adding those schools and having those traditional powerhouses like the Villanovas, UConns, etc., really, and now St. John's again with Patino having it going, playing the championship in Madison Square Garden, it just has a cachet that you don't see in other conferences. They're going to rise up. SEC is very strong right now. The ACC has recessed a little bit. The Big Ten is still trying to win a championship after not having one for almost 25 years. The Big Ten sustains, and I mean the Big East sustains, and it's a really good league from every way you want it. Great places to play, great players, tremendous rivalries, and then you get 4, 5, 6 teams in the tournament. It's kind of hard to say that it's a lesser conference. You talk about the Power Four for football, you got to say the Power Five with the Big East when it comes to basketball.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I'm sorry, James. Go ahead.
So what are your thoughts? This year, my senior year, will Villanova finally make the tournament with me being here?
I think it should. You know, there's the injury problems have made it tough for Kevin to get a rotation together. I mean, where's Stanford going to fit in? It's still so early. He played 2 games. I'm sure he's still trying to figure out what he wants to do. It's going to be very interesting to see if everybody gets healthy. This could be a team that could play 10 or 11 people on a regular basis.
Yeah.
They're going to be hard nosed because that's the kind of coach he is. Chuck, I don't know if you've seen one of his practices. I haven't.
Been to
I would
two.
imagine,
Yeah.
I would imagine he is no, soft touch on the practice floor. He wants guys diving for balls and banging around and playing 100 miles an hour. Every coach wants to, but certain get across better. There's talent there. The one thing I'm concerned about is that they have that one guy who, when you're down one with 16 seconds left, someone's got to get that bucket. That's the one
Yeah.
thing I think they haven't identified yet.
Yeah, and I think that'll come. I mean, that's going to come out through attrition. As it goes on, I think that guy will. It could very well be Perkins at the end of the day.
Yep.
He's the only guy that's been there multi years.
It could be
and I
Askew. I
think
mean, Askew scored a ton of points.
yeah,
Who's the guy that somebody had 25 the other night against Queens or
Lindsay, yeah.
Lindsay. He can shoot it, man. I like his game.
Yeah.
And
Right,
and
so
Duke Brennan I like a lot.
but I don't
He
think you can put him on the perimeter with the ball in his hands and call
No, he's not that guy. But you know what? He's averaging about 17 boards a game,
Go get the
mostly
boards.
offensive, which is crazy.
You're
And
watching him.
he takes zero shit from anybody. He played against BYU and got scuffled in with that big kid twice. Once they got it, there was a double foul called which I was cheering from my seat in my living room, and they went down for a loose ball. They both dove on the ball, and neither one of them wanted to let go of the ball.
And that's the kind of guy you want on your team.
100%.
You don't get a name like Duke if when you get your hand on the ball,
That's
you give
right.
it up, right? They're gonna
Yep.
they're gonna call you Dork. They're gonna find another name for you.
Yeah, to your point though, they got to find the guy who's going to take control and tell everybody you go here, that kind of thing. So we'll see.
Yeah.
There's a lot of positives to talk about right now, Mike. Though I mean, I
Oh, yeah.
love how hard they play. They don't give up, they don't quit. I mean, there's a lot of good things going on. And again, like you said, Kevin runs a different practice. It was funny because the first time I went into practice, I went in with Mike Sheridan. So I walk in, when you go to Jay's practice, it's very regimented and
Yes.
everything like that. And you walk in, and at the end of practice, Jay comes out and says, "Hey, this is Chuck from the '85 team. Say hi to Chuck, blah blah blah," or Mark, or whoever it was, right? So I walk in the door. Javon Pinkston met me at the door and let me in. I walk in the door, and the kids all came up to me and introduced themselves. And Kevin, and there's music playing. And I look at Mike, I go, "What the hell is this? What's going on? What's going on?" He goes, "It's different." I said, "So it really was like background noise, Mike, for these guys. And it was during their skills and drills type
Right.
thing. You know what I
Right.
mean? So as they're doing, there's no real yelling and screaming at that point. Then when the teaching was about to begin, the music was off and Kevin was in full Kevin mode.
Yep.
And it was great. And it was nice to see. And then he came over to me and he said, "Hey, look, we want to keep this culture the way it is. However, it's going to be different." I said, "Oh, I get that." And he said, "We need you guys to speak to these guys. No one cares if I say, 'Oh, this is Chuck from the '85 team,' or 'This is Harold Presley.' But if you go up to them and start talking and telling them, 'Hey, this is what we used to do. This is how we do it,' they now are zoomed in onto what you're saying." And he's right. He's
Yeah.
right, because I was at practice 2 weeks before Summer Jam. And then at Summer Jam, 3 or 4 of the guys came over to me and sat down with me and just started shooting the shit with me. And like we were talking about the history of the school and the program and those kinds of things, which was really nice. It was really good.
Athletes will do that better than regular students. Like they don't, a lot of my students listen to me in class, and I say to them at the end of the semester, listen, when someone my age talks to you, you should listen because we've made it this far.
Right.
You guys haven't
Right.
made a mortgage payment. You haven't raised a child. You haven't sat up with a sick child. You haven't sat up with a sick parent. You haven't done any of the stuff we've done, and we're telling you how to do it. So you might want to listen. You're like, you don't know how to use your iPhone like we do. Athletes are like, you guys did it. Especially you got a ring, you show up with one of those rings, they're going to be like, how the heck do I get one of those?
Right.
And you say, well, here's how you get one of those.
Right.
And so that's
Exactly.
and that's in any sport I found, whether it's field hockey or football or basketball. Athletes understand that the people before them, they all think they're better than the people before them, of course.
Right.
But they understand you guys had to go through it. You were hurt, you were sore, you were tired, you were angry, whatever, you still kept going forward. They appreciate that.
I got to ask you this because you mentioned that you wrote with Dick Vitale's basketball yearbook and the blue ribbon, all those different things. And those were all the things that I would look at prior to a college season. So how difficult is it now, Mike, to
Oh,
come up with predictions where you don't even know what they got? I mean, it's really amazing. I don't even know how they rank them, because
it's impossible.
it's impossible.
Impossible because there's no continuity. And some of the conferences that I do now, I still write for Blue Ribbon. So back then I was writing, some of the Big East, the Atlantic 10, and you'd say, okay, this guy came in as a freshman 2 years ago. Now he's a junior. Here's what he can do. You do the Big West or the Summit like I do. Not everybody's got 9, 10, 11 newcomers every year. And I say to the coaches, who's going to be good? They say, I have no idea.
Yeah.
They'll say, this guy's got a couple people back. I think he got a few transfers, but trying to pick a 1 through 10 it's impossible. And that's what I'm afraid of. And, we're talking about this year's Villanova team. And you look and you say, oh, Hodge and Perkins and Lewis, and there's some really good, and your boy Duke Brennan. There's some real talent here. The fear is, who's here next year? Do
Right.
6 of them come back? Or do 5 say, more than half of them say, well, I didn't play enough, or so-and-so is going to give me more money, and I'm leaving. That's where the fear comes in of where's the continuity? How do you build a program rather than building a team? And Villanova was always about the program. Jay said it all the time.
Yeah.
Brunson comes in, and immediately Josh Hart is saying to him, here's how we do things here. Jay didn't have to tell him.
Well, John Pannone taught me, and on and on. It's
Yeah.
the older guy teaches the younger guy,
Right. It's not going to be around anymore. I mean, Eric Dixon was there for 9 years. He could.
And let me ask you this: like Jalen comes in, he sits behind Ryan Archidiakono. Do you think he would leave now if he had the opportunity? He would have left
immediately.
So
5-star recruit comes to town and says, "All right, I'll play 20 minutes a game." You got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
No chance. And you saw a little bit with Quinterly, with Antoine. Some of the guys who didn't get the playing time, they got out of here fast.
Yeah.
That's the fear. If I'm Willard, I'm thinking, how do I create the culture that makes the kids want to stay and believe in me? But when someone's offering them an extra $150,000, and I had a coach, Terry Bowden, when he coached at Auburn, tell me football. He said, you don't get it. Some of these kids, I'd say, why would a kid leave college football and be a 6th-round draft choice when he could come back for a year and be a 3rd-round draft choice? He said, these kids, $50,000 is all the money in the world to their families.
Right.
So if you're getting paid a little extra somewhere else, that means a lot.
I think the portal is more of the problem than the money. I don't think the money is an issue. Like it is with the portal. I mean, it's just and that again leads me to the question I had for you before. You look at this year's Big East, okay? I watched St. John's play against Alabama. All right. St. John's was ranked number 5. Alabama was ranked 2. Okay. St. John's to me, and I know this is going to piss off a lot of Johnny's fans. St. John's to me played selfish basketball. They did not move the ball. The bigs did all the scoring in the first half. The guards did all the scoring in the second half. Whoever had it when they crossed half court, let it go. And I watched Alabama hit 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 passes, and bang, now you got an open look. You got an open 3, and it was real basketball. The other team in the Big East that's interested me a little bit right now is the Georgetown Hoyas. They come out and they beat Kentucky at Rupp. That's not easy to do. We've been there. I mean, that's not easy to do. And then they beat Maryland, pretty handedly.
Yeah.
So you never know. And also Providence they slacked. They fell down a little bit in overtime the other night, but I mean they look pretty good too. So these are all teams that are not even Villanova look good. These guys are all teams that weren't even talked about in the top 2 or 3 teams of the conference.
And there's one thing that Alabama had that St. John's didn't. And that's Mark Sears.
Yeah, well, that's true.
Experienced guard who has played there for a couple of years. Nate Oates can say, here's what we do, and he did it. And what do you have, like 35 or something?
Yeah.
St. John's doesn't have that. And Pitino has said it. I don't want freshmen. I want experienced players. The problem with the experienced players is you sit in the locker room and you say, how much did you get? You say, well, I got 250. Well, I got 175. Now I'm mad at you. I may not pass you the ball.
Right.
And people say that's ridiculous. That ain't ridiculous. You've been in locker rooms. You know that the jealousies crop up.
Not only that, but you got all your boys at home in your ear. You know what I mean? Like, why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing that? That's why I thought it was interesting. 2 things I'll say to stuff like that. Right. Last year, R.J. Lewis, had a meltdown in the playoffs, and Rick couldn't put him back in the game for St. John's. Okay. To me, it wasn't that he went 3 for 17. To me, it was he had never, ever faced adversity before. and Mass used to tell us all the time, the true character of a guy comes out during times of adversity. It's easy to be a good guy and be positive when the ball's going in the basket. Well, when it's not going in the basket, this guy just went right to pieces. I saw the big kid Zuby grab him by the shoulders and say, "Hey, man, we need you." Even so you step back from the shots. Maybe you play deep and you get a rebound, you get some assists. You don't quit. You don't just stop playing. And
Yeah,
therefore, he was the player of the year in the Big East and didn't even get drafted.
and coaches say it all the time. And Izzo says this often. A kid who's got, as you said, the people in his ear. His agent is out talking to general managers from other schools. 10 years ago, could you imagine if I had said that sentence? Someone would have told me that I was insane.
Yeah.
He's talking to agents, and the agents are going, well, this school's probably going to lose its point guard. There may be a spot open for you here. Come
Right.
February, they're already thinking, all right, I'm playing in Stillwater next year or in Chapel Hill or whatever. They're checked out. So
Okay.
look, I believe the athletes. I believe the athletes should have freedom. The coaches have a lot of freedom, but there has to be some kind of guardrails put up so this doesn't turn into a situation where every year you're bringing an entirely new roster in.
Yeah. It would be impossible to maintain. It would just be, you'll see some of these teams, these lower level teams, start dropping levels. Like I think St. Francis just went D3.
Yep.
I think you're going to see more of that. I
You
think.
get a kid who comes in as a freshman. Well, Lafayette last year. Lafayette had a player who came in and shot the lights out from 3-point. He shot like 45, 46%. He's in the ACC this year. Lafayette thinks we got ourselves a find here. We can become a Patriot League powerhouse. Nope, he's gone. Sam Brown at Penn, he's at Davidson because they didn't have the collective or the ability to give him the money. Deuce Jones goes from LaSalle to St. Joe's. Zion comes to Villanova from Temple. It's just the kids, and as Leonard Hamilton used to just say over and over, the credits don't always transfer. You don't make the connections that you make when you're at a place for 2 years. I mean, you're a perfect example. People from when you were at Villanova still 40 years later, not just teammates, alumni, people who were other students at Villanova. It really helped you in what you ended up doing. These guys don't have that.
It's funny that you said that because you're 1,000% right. Nova Nation's network is far and wide, and you'd be surprised at where you'll find somebody that went to school there. I mean, it's funny because the group of us from the 85 team, hey, I'm going to Vegas, say. Hey, do we got any guys in Vegas? What do we got? Who's over here or who's over there? And inevitably we do. It's unbelievable. The doors have opened up for a lot of people that if you know who's who, it really is great. And you're right. They won't experience that. And it's a shame because that's all part of the experience,
Right. They don't have a degree. And they don't build the same rapport with the coach, too. And when you were at Syracuse, Boeheim was there for 150 years.
Right.
You could always go back to him and say, hey, I need some help. John Thompson was helping players for years after he stopped coaching.
Yeah.
The same thing that Rollie did. I'm sure Rollie was a great resource for you after you were done.
Oh, yeah.
For anything, whether it was connecting you with somebody that could give you help in your professional career, or you had some personal issues.
Well, you know what? That was a different relationship with Coach Massimino because the basketball part was only about that much.
Yeah.
The rest of it, listen, you can say a lot about, whether I played well, I didn't play well. It doesn't matter at the end of the day, Mike. What mattered more to me, and people come up to me, my friends, for years would say to me, "Did you wish you went somewhere else where you would have maybe played a little more?" Or I said, no. I said because I got more out of the experience than anybody could because he was like he was like the president of a Fortune 500 company called Villanova Basketball.
Right.
And I've told this to some of my teammates and everything, and we've gone back and forth over it because some guys get angry and they still harbor feelings about stuff that happened 40 years ago. So I say to them, look, he had to make decisions that were good for business, so he could feed his family. He's not the math teacher that coaches basketball. He's a basketball coach.
Right.
So you don't have to like his decisions. I don't have to like them, but and then after you graduated, you became like on the board of trustees of that company. You know what
Right.
I mean? So you were involved with, he would come to me and talk, and I would come to him. When he went to Vegas, we had a heart-to-heart talk in Vegas that was unbelievable. About everything that went on, and I would consult him. What do you think? I got this. I got an opportunity to buy this house. Do you think it's a good deal? Do you think? I would run it by him all the time. So would everybody else.
Yeah, and that's what these guys are missing. And I hope it doesn't get too far afield to where it's so transactional that all they really are is hanging out for about 6 to 8 months on campus before they go somewhere else. Because the model could very easily go semi-pro, where these guys are living in a townhouse off campus, maybe taking a couple of professional development classes in money, finances, personal finances, brand development or whatever, and they're really not part of the student body at all. They just show up and play in front of the crowds.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. Well, we're going to end it with this, Mike. I mean, appreciate you coming on with us and hanging out with us. We've had a great conversation. So normally we have, when we look up stuff and we do our due diligence here, we kid around, Sonny and I kid around and say, we are professional journalists. This is not, we turn the lights on and there it is, So, in the past we've had some interesting fun facts on some of our guests. Mike Vaccaro from the New York Post is very, very into The Godfather, and he considers himself an expert on Godfather trivia until our own resident expert, Sonny Spera, beat him in a trivia contest about The Godfather, which I was blown away at. I didn't even know Sonny knew the Godfather trivia like that. So we're going to have our guy James talk to you about a couple of fun facts that we found out about Mike Bradley.
First, I kind of start with this one. So is it true that when you were a kid, you used to read your newspapers upside down, so your brother would stay on the same pace reading the newspaper as you?
No, it was I got the sports page Monday, Wednesday, Friday. He got the sports page Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. He sat across from me at the breakfast table. He'd spread the sports page out. I was mad because I didn't have the sports page, so I would read it upside down. I wouldn't do anything for him. He was reading too slowly. I'd say, turn it on page because I'm done what I need to see on this page. So yeah, I mean that came in handy as a journalist because you walk into someone's office and they got a bunch of stuff on their desk. You're looking at it upside down. You can read it right away. So yeah, that was very valuable. My dad got it on Sunday, so I had to wait till he was done with it. But he wasn't about to give it up. But no, that's how I learned how to read upside down. Be on the sports page.
Awesome. Very interesting. And just another fun fact here. Obviously, it's something that I've experienced myself because I took you as a professor. I would love to hear you talk about your philosophy behind the grammar rule you have in class. For those who don't know, his grammar rule is he knocks you down a half letter grade, I believe, for a single grammar mistake.
No, I do not. If you got 5 or 6 grammar mistakes, they're all worth a point. When I went to high school at Haverford School, which is right down the road.
Right down the road, yep.
They came up with a thing called the death list. And it was the English department. It was a list of grammatical errors and corresponding point deductions. Now, the first time it started off, if you had 1, you failed, but that was too draconian. So they had, 3 points for a run-on sentence, 2 points because you split an infinitive. Nobody even knows what that is anymore. Misspelled word, 1. And we didn't have spell check back there. We wrote out our themes, as they called them, on paper, on Haverford School theme paper. So I teach you guys grammar in class, and you better know it, or else I'm going to knock you down a half grade if you got 5 or 6 errors.
All right. Well, it's good to know for class next semester.
Listen, I'm glad I didn't take your class, Mike. I'd have been down to nothing.
Well, you know what Jay said to me one day? I was interviewing him, and he said when I was just starting out there, he goes, "Hey, is your class good for my guys?" I said, "They got to be good writers."
So that's a loaded question, Mike. Come on.
I said to him, "They got to be good writers." He goes, "Okay, good to know. Thanks a lot. Really appreciate that."
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Well, listen, we thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your time and coming out and hanging with us. You know, it isn't every day we get, you know, a current professor at Villanova to come hang with us and have the extensive sports background that you have. So,
Well, and if you want to next time, if you bring me back, you try me on Animal House trivia because there is no one
oh,
in the world who
well,
knows
listen.
Animal House the way I do.
Well, you know what? If I didn't, I wish I'd have known that because we would have had a little Animal House.
I
Trivia.
could
You
come
would
up.
probably kill me though, that's for sure. Even though I love that. You know what's funny, Mike? My kids have never seen that movie, and I keep
Really?
telling them you got to see this movie.
Well,
You
at
know?
the end of the semester, I write on the board 50 movies that they got to see. Everything from Citizen Kane to The Godfather, all the way down to Animal House and
Right.
stuff like that. So yeah, that one is I know a lot about The Godfather, maybe not as much as Vaccaro, but
Yeah.
I know everything about Animal House.
It's funny because I see Bluto right over your shoulder there
Yeah,
behind you.
there
There he is, my man. You know, so listen, he was fantastic in that, and a lot of that was ad libbed, especially
without a doubt.
the food fight stuff was all
And the
ad libbed.
guitar scene when he's on the steps and the guy's playing "I Gave My Love a Cherry." First of all, that's Stephen Bishop who sang
Yep.
the song "Animal House." Bishop didn't know Belushi was going to grab the guitar and smash it. And if you watch it, the next time you watch it, Bishop is appalled, but Belushi's wife is actually sitting on the steps, and the rest of them are cowering, and she's laughing because it's her husband doing what he
Right.
does.
That's hilarious. Yeah, he was the best, man. And those guys have stood the test of time. That
No
movie
question.
and those actors too. So
No question.
fantastic. Well, we'll have to have you back for that one.
My pleasure.
Well, and James, you did a fantastic job. First time with the microphone. Congratulations, pal. You did great. I knew you would.
Appreciate it, Chuck.
And thank you for all that you do for the program. You know, we really can't do what we're doing without you, man. So hopefully when you graduate, you find a couple of minutes to get some stuff out, or you got to teach somebody so we can bring the next one in and keep it moving through Villanova. So thanks again. You've been listening and watching the Big East Rewind with Chuck Everson and Sonny Spera. Today's host was James Hapt, our intern. The Big East Rewind is produced and directed by Nick Chico Corus and Daryl Gurney. Check us out on the Sirius XM app, on YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. And please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with a friend. Have a great day, everybody. Thanks for joining us.